Welcome to part 2 of my video about narcissistic bosses. Or I guess this is videos, my second video about narcissistic bosses. If you didn't see the first video, this video will still make sense to you, but I do encourage you to go watch that video. I'll put a card somewhere around here. In the first video, I just went over red flags of companies with narcissistic bosses, and then I delved in deeper into some of these red flags. And this video is just going to be a continuation of continuing to delve into manipulation tactics that might not seem so obvious, that might not be the stereotypical thing that you might expect to see from a narcissistic boss. And the purpose of the first video and of this video are both to help you identify whether or not you are working for a narcissist and or you are in a toxic work environment. Welcome to Looking Behind the Mirror, where we explore narcissism and take our lives back as we make sense out of nonsense. As a quick disclaimer, everything I say is based on my opinions and my personal experiences. I am not a professional, and if you're really struggling, I encourage you to seek professional help. I am providing links below for you. So I'm just going to jump right back in where I left off on the last video, and that is to talk about the next manipulation tactic that narcissistic bosses use, and that is to play favorites. And they can do this in ways that aren't so obvious. Narcissists in any walk of life, whether they're your boss or your boyfriend or your mom or whoever, narcissists really love to play us versus them. This is how they get people to form loyalties to them. This is how they can manipulate people into feeling special by creating this us versus them. And narcissistic bosses are certainly no exception to this. This can be a really powerful manipulation tool for a narcissistic boss. And a way that a narcissistic boss could do this is maybe to really talk down about people that have left the company, to shun people that have quit, no matter the reason that they've quit, to make people that are still at the company feel like they're special, they're elite, they had what it takes to stay at this awesome company that's the best thing that ever happened to anybody in the world. And narcissistic bosses can even create this within the company. So they will create this feeling with their employees, with comparing their employees to people outside the company, people that have left the company, and then they will also use this manipulation within the company. Oh, and I need to make a quick disclaimer, like I did in the first video, that nothing I talk about in this whole video is necessarily something that happened to me personally. You just never know who's watching these videos, and I am not claiming to have personally experienced anything that I'm talking about in this video. But like I was saying, narcissists really need scapegoats and a golden child. This is really typical in narcissistic families with narcissistic parents. Narcissistic parents will have the scapegoat child that can never do anything right and the golden child that can never do anything wrong. Narcissistic bosses do the same thing. They will have golden employees that they put up on pedestals that can do no wrong, that get the promotions, that get special treatment. And then they have scapegoat employees that just can never do anything right, that are blamed for everything. And no matter how hard they try, they're never given any credit that they deserve. I maybe have experienced a situation in which I saw an employee being asked to work overtime over a weekend really suddenly with like hardly any notice at all. This person had to work over unpaid overtime over the weekend, spent almost his entire weekend on this sudden project that got dropped in his lap. And he was so eager to try to do a good job because he was really, for whatever reason, a scapegoat at this company. And he worked really hard all weekend. And then when this was all said and done, instead of looking at this employee and saying, you know what, this employee is actually really dedicated. He really works really hard and he really came through on this project that I dropped in his lap at the last second. Instead, this boss actually looked at him, and I don't know if he said this to his face, but he did say this, he maybe said this, said, wow, this guy's really inefficient with his time if he really had to take all weekend to do this project. This is the same person that dropped this huge project in his lap at the last second. not the least bit grateful for this guy working all weekend, not willing to recognize any of this effort, not willing to recognize the quality of this guy's work. All he could do was say, wow, how inefficient that this guy had to work all weekend without pay. This guy didn't get paid to do this. This is the extent that narcissistic bosses can go to with the scapegoat in the company. And then they will make the golden child in the company feel like the reason they get treated so well is just because they're so much better. And this can be really hard to give up when you believe that there must be something really special about you that makes the narcissist look at you and say, no, now you're good enough. If you worked all weekend, it's because you're such a hard worker. Now, what makes a narcissist choose one person to be the golden child and one person to be the scapegoat? I personally think that it could just be random because somebody has to fill these roles. But I think the narcissist is probably most likely to assign the golden child role to the person that feeds their ego the best, the person that's buying into their BS the most. It's just a guess. The person that's the scapegoat is maybe somebody that sees through their act a little bit, or just isn't blowing sunshine up their skirt all day. I mean, or it could be completely random, but somebody has to be the golden child and somebody has to be the scapegoat, because there has to be this environment of us versus them, of black and white, of good employee, bad employee, because that way employees can see this and employees can strive to be on the good list instead of on the bad list. And this is just another way that narcissistic bosses can control their employees, by showing them what will happen if you don't do everything that the boss is asking of you, that you are afraid to make any missteps because you don't want to be the scapegoat. And narcissistic bosses can create this us versus them within the company, pitting employees against each other by maybe they pull someone aside and say, hey, I think this guy is coming in late and not reporting it or not keeping track of it. I want you to personally keep an eye on this guy and record what time he actually comes in. And that makes the person keeping track of this other guy's time feel like the boss trusts him or her, like the boss is saying, I know that you always come in on time. I can trust you, but this guy over here, I think he's trying to rip the company off by coming in late all the time. So I need you to keep track of it for me because I trust you. And this can really be quite intoxicating to somebody that's really searching for approval or seeking for approval, especially in an environment in which some people are scapegoats. This can feel really good, like, oh, good, I'm on the good list. And meanwhile, it can create a lot of tension needlessly between two employees that are probably both just trying to do their job. I mean, a boss might also have one employee go through another employee's emails, like, I think this employee is covering things up. I think this employee is hiding things and not telling me the truth about their workflow. I might have seen a situation in which there was this lady that was extremely overwhelmed with a ridiculously unreasonable workload and could not keep up with everything she was doing. And so started telling white lies and hiding things in emails because she didn't have the nerve to talk to her boss, because her boss was not going to accept that she was overwhelmed. Her boss was going to always turn it around on her and blame it on her, and at the same time continue to demand unreasonable things. So out of fear for losing her job and out of fear for even trying to talk to her boss, she started hiding things. And so this boss maybe asked another employee to start spying on this employee to try to find proof that this employee is a liar and a cheat, right? So that makes this employee that is spying on this employee feel like they're one that is trusted by this narcissistic boss. And of course, this can create an enormous amount of tension between the employee that's getting spied on, that's already overwhelmed, and the employee that's just trying to do their job and do what the boss has asked them to do. I could keep going on about this, but I have other things to talk about. But basically, if you're in a work environment in which the boss says that they hate drama, but somehow there's always drama going on, but the boss's hands are always clean. Or you're in an environment where there are people that the boss likes and people that the boss is upset with or unsatisfied with. This is a really toxic work environment. In a healthy work environment, the employees should not know who the boss is satisfied with and who the boss is not satisfied with. This should not be something that's obvious and apparent. And this should not be something that the employees are paying attention to and trying to stay on the good side of. The next thing I want to talk about is, it's not really a manipulation tactic, but it's something that you will very commonly see with narcissistic bosses, and that is that they have no loyalty. They could have an employee that has been reliable, awesome, competent employee for 10 years. And if anything goes wrong that makes that narcissistic boss feel threatened or feel like this person isn't buying into their bullshit anymore, they can drop that person like a hot potato. They can fire that person like it means nothing to them. It doesn't matter how many years this person has put in, how hard this person has worked for them, what a golden child this person has been for however long. If the narcissist starts to feel threatened, or for whatever reason suddenly doesn't feel like this person can serve their needs anymore, or that they have use for this person anymore, they have no loyalty to anybody, no matter how much it seems that they may. This is something that all narcissists have in common. They do not have sentimental feelings for anyone in their life. I mean, the person they're married to, their own children. Narcissists have no problem cutting people off at a moment's notice without even saying goodbye. So if you see this happening in your company, if you see employees that have been there for years, or employees that were always greatly favored by the boss suddenly just cut off and fired, and no notice, no explanation, no goodbyes, that's a huge red flag. Narcissists pretty universally have no loyalty. And of course, they expect loyalty from you. So that's another red flag of a toxic work environment, where the boss expects some kind of loyalty from you, expects you to demonstrate loyalty somehow. Like you're not supposed to talk about other companies, or you're not supposed to talk to people at other companies. Your loyalty should be completely undying, unbreakable, while the narcissist's loyalty will never exist. Another manipulation tactic that narcissistic bosses will use is to make you feel like you're really lucky to be in this work environment. You're really lucky to have this job, that the boss has somehow gone out on a limb and taken a big chance on you, and nobody else would take this kind of chance on you. Nobody else would give you this kind of opportunity. Nobody else would pay you this much, or nobody else would put up with you and how unorganized you are, or whatever. Narcissistic bosses will make you feel like you cannot find this kind of opportunity anywhere else. This is just a really manipulative way to make you feel like you can't leave. That when things start to get really bad and you're really unhappy in this toxic work environment, that the narcissist hopes that you will think that you don't have any options out there, that you believe that nobody else would want to hire you, or that you would have to take a huge pay cut if you left. And they can do this in ways that are not so obvious. They might have one-on-one meetings with you where they say things like, I can see the potential in you. I just need you to keep trying, or I know that this job is a little above your head, but I know that you can do it if you just keep trying. I have faith in you. Saying things that subtly suggest, you're really not good enough to do this job. We both know that, but I'm going to give you a chance. I'm going to let you try to learn on the job this thing that you're really not good enough for, and really make you feel like you're kind of cheating the system somehow. I've said this before, but if a narcissist is keeping you around anywhere, in a job, in a relationship, wherever, if a narcissist is keeping you around, it is because there's something you're doing that is good enough. You are probably doing an amazing job, because a narcissist's expectations will always be ridiculously unreasonable. So you're never going to satisfy the narcissist. You're never going to do a good enough job to make the narcissist happy. But if they're keeping you around, you're probably doing a pretty amazing job. This next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of just a red flag rather than a manipulation tactic. And that is that narcissistic bosses can tend to get really angry or really excited about something, really worked up about something, hold a whole meeting about something, maybe change all the artwork on the walls or buy everybody this book or something and make a huge deal out of something. And then like a week later, it's like it never happened. They might have a meeting with you where they say, we need to completely change this whole system that we're doing into some other system. And what they're saying kind of doesn't make any sense, but you're like, oh boy, I guess I need to figure out how to do this. I mean, this person's the boss. And then a week later, it's like they never even said it. Now, this is not necessarily something a narcissistic boss will do. I mean, there are other mental health struggles that might cause this kind of behavior, or just people that get a little too excited and are forgetful can do this kind of thing. But this is something that you will see from narcissistic bosses a lot of the time, because they have these unrealistic, ridiculous expectations in their head. They have these delusions that their company is going to exceed far beyond anything that anybody else has ever accomplished. And they get really excited over things that really don't make any sense. You know, if they can see a vision in their head about how something's going to make them so much better than everybody else, they really don't stop to think about the details or bother to stop and think about how realistic something is. They get really excited, they rally their employees, and then they just move on to something else the next day, because narcissists live in the present moment. So whatever was making them feel amazing yesterday is probably just in the past today, something that they've completely forgotten about. They've moved on to something else. And this does apply to things that they could be really angry about as well. So a narcissist could be yelling at you, carrying on about what a failure you are at something that you were supposed to do. And then the next day it's like you're trying to correct this horrible mistake you made. And then you realize that the narcissist has completely forgotten about it. Working for a narcissist can feel like sand going through your fingers, like you're trying to grab sand or you're trying to write with disappearing ink. Nothing that you talked about yesterday means anything today. And, you know, as you learn this with a narcissistic boss, it can actually be kind of nice, because when they lay some huge, ridiculous project on you, 9 times out of 10, you could usually just ignore it and just keep doing your job. Because as some of you may have experienced, you can work really hard on this project that they were so excited about and it was so important to them, and you can get it all done just the way they want. You can spend weeks on it. And then when you go to present it to them, they're like, it's almost like they forgot that they ever brought it up. They might just glance at it and then never use it. That's really typical of narcissistic bosses. The last thing I'm going to talk about in this video is how narcissistic bosses instill the fear of making mistakes in you, or just fear in general, fear of letting them down, fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of filing something the wrong way, terror that should not be there. It is normal to be afraid of making mistakes, you know, especially really important, costly mistakes. It's normal to try to avoid that, and it's normal to be afraid of it, but it's not normal to be terrified of making mistakes. I don't know how else I can put this, especially when you look at the types of mistakes that you might make in a company that's being run by a narcissist, and see that it can be so chaotic, so unorganized, so hard to keep up with what's going on or how things are being done, that it makes it difficult not to make mistakes sometimes. But the narcissist still wants you to blame yourself for any mistake. And the narcissist can also really talk out of both sides of their mouth. Like, I might have known maybe somebody that worked for a very narcissistic person that was always saying, we fail forward and failure is the way to success and making mistakes is human. You know, saying this, paying lip service to the idea that it's okay to make mistakes, but then at the same time making employees feel like when they did make mistakes that something was horribly, fundamentally wrong with them, like this was a character flaw, and somehow making employees terrified to make any kind of mistakes. And this person that I might have known maybe had this happen, where this same boss that said that you need to fail forward and it's okay to make mistakes found a mistake that this person had made a year and a half earlier. I mean, actually went on a mission to find a mistake that this employee had made, and actually had maybe another employee spend all of their time looking through this other employee's work to try to find a mistake, and they couldn't find one that was newer than a year and a half. But once he found this mistake that was a year and a half old, this person maybe wrote up this employee for this mistake that he found and put in writing in this write-up that if this employee made one more mistake, they would lose certain privileges. And if they made two more mistakes, any mistakes, two more mistakes ever, they would be fired. This is the same person that was saying that we fail forward and it's okay to make mistakes and we can only succeed by making mistakes. So they can say one thing and then cultivate this environment in which the employees are terrified of making mistakes. At the company I work at right now, if I make a mistake, I understand that the management trusts me, and that the management understands that everybody makes mistakes sometimes, and they don't treat it as if I did it on purpose to try to hurt the company or to try to lie to them somehow. Narcissistic bosses treat mistakes as if they are crimes, and they make you terrified to communicate with them when you do make a mistake. So add on top of that the fact that you might want to hide your mistake because you're too scared to bring it up because of the narcissist's attitude. But then add to that all the confusion of the narcissist telling you that it's okay to make mistakes when you know that it's really not. This is a toxic work environment. In a healthy work environment, it actually is okay to make mistakes. It actually is acceptable. When you make a mistake in a healthy work environment, management will acknowledge it. They will acknowledge that, whatever damage has been done, and then they will try to find a solution, and they will usually work with you and have a conversation like, okay, well, how can we fix this now? Now, how did this happen? How can we prevent this? A narcissistic boss will look at you and say, how could you make a mistake like this? How could you let this happen? Or they will at least make you feel that way, like you have committed a crime, like you did it on purpose. Narcissists do this in your personal life too. When you make mistakes or you have some flaw or you're not perfect, they act like you're doing it on purpose to hurt them, to inconvenience them, or to teach them a lesson or something like that. And they will use it to hold over your head. They will use it to control you. For that person that I was talking about that got written up for making a mistake, maybe if that person existed, that boss was probably hoping that they could use that threat of, if you ever make two more mistakes, you're fired. That boss was probably hoping that they could use that to control this employee out of fear, to be able to tell this employee anything. That this boss could boss this employee around and tell this person what to do, because now this employee is afraid of losing their job, right? But this employee, if this person was real, which we don't know, found a new job like a week and a half later and just walked out on this boss, allegedly. And that is what I really hope for you if you work in a toxic work environment that is really making your life miserable. I think if you're really sucked into the culture and the manipulation has really got a stronghold on you, it's kind of like getting out of a cult. It really takes a lot of work to get your mind out of the manipulation and the conditioning. But these kind of companies or work environments can do so much more damage to you than I think you might even realize. I mean, I've known people that have left companies and suddenly had physical problems they were having start to get better. The kind of stress that a toxic work environment can put on you can cause physical problems and, of course, emotional problems. nobody deserves to have to live this way. I mean, isn't it bad enough that most of us have to work full time, spend most of our time working just to survive? We should be able to work in an environment that isn't being ruled by somebody that's trying to control and manipulate us and make us miserable. I know it's not always easy to just quit a job and get a new one, but if you're working in a toxic work environment, I want to really encourage you to prioritize that, because to prioritize that is to prioritize your well-being, your mental health, the quality of your life, possibly your physical health. This is really, really important. This is the place that you spend most of your time at. You deserve for it to be a healthy environment that isn't destroying you. And don't forget that one of the manipulation tactics that narcissistic bosses will use is to make you think that nobody else would want to hire you, that there's no better opportunity out there for you. I can tell you that if you work for a narcissistic boss who has kept you around, you have more to offer the working world than you think you do. You are more competent and you have more opportunity than that person will ever want you to realize. So take a chance on yourself. Don't just quit your job if you need it, but prioritize a way to escape if you are working in this kind of an environment. I hope this helps. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and comment below any ideas you have for me for future videos. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you like this video and would like to see more like it in the future. Until next time, thanks. Bye.